Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Extra Shift. I'm Chris here, as always, with Brendan. How are we going?
Good. Yeah, it's the NHL makes it hard to do a podcast like once one round finishes because they're like 3 games into the second round by the time round one is over.
And there was no reason for it to be that staggered. Like the
Yeah,
series that started last finished before a bunch of them.
yeah.
Like, because Anaheim versus Edmonton started last, and like we were still at a couple of games in the East, which had started way
Yeah,
before.
like I get we had a couple of sweeps, but look, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. It's episode 232.
Yep.
Yeah, it's look, it's good to have playoff hockey back, even briefly for some teams.
It's just a shame that nothing's happened in the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's just there's nothing to talk about. We've got nothing. So much so, I'm going to jump largely over the number. I'm just going to say that this, of course, is belongs to Philadelphia's Flyers legend and Sharks legend Murray Craven. There we go. That's it. That's all you get. Yep. That's all you get. You get a Murray Craven. This is the Murray Craven podcast. We're here for it anyway. Far more importantly than all of that, the league kind of went boom a little bit. In a couple of key areas. There's a couple of things that might have happened. A bunch of people on the Australian NHL fans Facebook page decided to say that the league is paid off every year for the draft lottery, which, given that this is the most transparent,
I feel like we hear that every year.
But this is the most transparent year they've done it, because they literally drew the balls in front of everybody.
Yeah. Well, but they did apparently like go to break while putting the balls in the thing, which immediately made everyone go, "Oh, look!"
They went to break putting the balls in the thing, but left it up in the bottom corner, so you can still see it.
Yeah. I mean, still, look, the thing for me with any conspiracy theory is like I feel like, oh, sweetie, like so much with the people that believe this kind of thing, like if. It really puts so much faith in a league that has proven again and again that they can't be trusted to like make the right decision in any situation or really pull anything off. That so many things have like leaked about them, so many mistakes they've made or whatever. How do you think they could possibly rig something like this without it being immediately out in the open?
And the other point, and we'll get to it when we talk about what happened in the draft lottery, but spoiler alert, the Leafs won it. But Steve Dangle made one very good point about this, which is they said about, it's rorted because the league loves the Leafs. And as he said, if you've seen what's happened with Toronto, and this is where we're going to start with what's happened with Toronto, in the last 24 to 48 hours, Gary doesn't want this pick anywhere near Toronto. Gary's not happy with Toronto right now. The last thing Gary wanted was for them to get the first overall pick, because Gary's not particularly happy with the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs decided that John Shaker was their general manager.
There's a name I thought that I was never going to hear in hockey again.
No, so hang on. I have to correct myself, because obviously the press conference by Keith Pelly was a masterpiece of public relations. It's a clear messaging. It was a clear structure. They asked about a clear structure. You know you're in trouble when Steve Simmons and Rosie D'Amato are asking common sense questions. You've got a problem. But I just do want to point out that when he was asked about the structure, and I think Rosie D'Amato asked it, she was like, "I'm a bit confused," and everyone laughed. Fair enough. What's the structure? What are the job titles? Because they never gave out job titles. And the job title that officially Keith Pelly said is that John Shaker is the general manager of hockey operations. A brand new job. No one's ever had this title before. And Matt Sundin is senior executive advisor. Now, apparently inside of Rogers Media and Rogers as a company, they've got rid of the word president. So, which is why no one was named as president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're just getting rid of the word president from within.
Just every executive, senior, vice, etc., etc.,
yeah,
etc.
Except Keith Pelly, who's in charge of everything in Toronto. Look, I think we need to start with the Toronto stuff, and people are going, "Oh, it's the Leafs." Well, look, like they won the draft lottery. We're going to hear a lot about this. The Toronto Maple Leafs hiring John Shaker is a far bigger story than a lot of people in the league will want to admit, because John Chaker was effectively blackballed.
Mm.
If you listen to everybody talk about Chaker, except for the handful of people that Keith Pelly asked, apparently,
Yeah.
nobody has a good word to say about Chaker's time in Arizona. In fact, everything that comes out about Chaker's time in Arizona seems to indicate that it was more mental than they even let on.
Mm.
And that, again, he had one decent draft, but the scouting had already been done. And every draft he had after that was terrible. And he ended his tenure at Arizona breaching the guidelines on when you could do player testing and losing picks for the Coyotes, and then got fired because he tried to sneakily apply for the New Jersey Devils job while still contracted to Arizona.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, to be honest, look, there was a lot of bad stuff that came up about Chaker after he left. Some of it was probably totally fabricated because it was written by Steve Simmons. Steve Simmons released in the oeuvre of Steve Simmons writing that includes Phil Kessel's hot dog cart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He made some claims that like Chaker had 9 computers on his desk and 8 of them didn't work.
They had frozen screens on Cap Friendly.
That sounds like a completely fucking wild made up thing.
But it also sounds like it would have come out from 8 other sources because someone would have gone, "Did you see what was in the office?"
Like, yeah, it's. I mean, that sounds like bullshit to me. But like, I think that the gist of there were a lot of people that were skeptical about his approach to analytics and his approach to data and what he was using things for. There was he was running a company which was essentially like a lot of this stuff wasn't publicly available. It wasn't open to any kind of scrutiny or anything like that. There was some questionable some people who were in that kind of scene were a little bit skeptical of his use of that kind of information anyway. Like he maybe wasn't accurate to represent like people who were coming into hockey from like a operationally like analytical standpoint.
And one of my favorite stories about that, by the way, just quickly, is that a couple of people who asked, and Dangle mentioned this, was that they said that he's been in touch with the company, which is Statleaf, and apparently everyone was like, yes, his sister's the brains of the operation.
Yes,
Megan Chaker's the brains.
Yeah,
which everyone comments.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it's a weird choice for me because I don't know who this is really for. Like from the standpoint of if you wanted, like he kind of feels like really like a Timu version of Kyle Dubas in this situation.
I was going to say, this feels like an organization that has looked at what's happened in the last few seasons and gone, we probably shouldn't have let Kyle go.
Yeah, who can we get that's Kyle like?
We can't get Kyle back, but let's get a guy who looks a bit nerdy, had a junior career, and he's got a suit and he likes stats.
Yeah.
That's what it feels. It feels like they worked out. Obviously, they can't get Kyle back.
Yeah, and then we'll put Sundin in for the uncles so that they feel like they've got someone that they can look up to.
Did you? I watched it. I know you. Did you? You caught highlights and bits and pieces of the press?
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing. I just saw bits and pieces of it.
Matt Sundin might as well have been a sort of animatronic. Not because he's awkward, but because he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And the only thing that people kept on asking him about was about watching hockey and keeping up with the product. And he goes, I watch all the games in Sweden. And it kind of everyone came out of that and went, no, he doesn't. No, he has not been watching all of the games. The other weird bit of the press conference was when they asked Keith Pelly about, we'll talk about the Steve Simmons bit in a minute, but when they asked Keith Pelly about the links to Ty Domi, because the suggestion is that Ty Domi played a massive role in Chaker getting hired. When obviously Chaker was in Arizona, Max was with the Coyotes. Max stayed with the Chakers, I believe, and John and Ty have been good friends. There was several people in the media the ones who don't work for Rogers, suggested very strongly that Ty Domi had at least been a massive sounding board and had at least brought Chaker into the conversation. When Keith Pelly was asked about that, he said that he had zero role to play, was not involved in the process whatsoever. This is just laughable. But then also did bring up things like they said I used AI during the, which, you know, independent reporting. And if you haven't read the report by Jonas Siegel and Chris Johnston, and I can't remember the third person was in that one, but anyway, that article about the Leafs this year, read it, because those three writers in particular, first of all, are very well connected. Secondly, don't work for Rogers, so you're not going to get the Rogers spin on it. Paint a really bleak picture of that front office and the fact that Keith Pelly is trying to run an organization that he doesn't understand and knows nothing about, but wants to be hands-on with it. I kind of felt like, yes, Sundin was brought out to make everyone happy with the idea that Mats is here. It's like, I don't know if you noticed during the draft lottery, but they had Mats on screen. And they said originally, everyone was like, oh, Shaker's at home watching it, blah, 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 blah. But then if you watch the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Blueprint social media video, John Shaker's standing off camera. And he comes running in and high fives Mats, and they're celebrating when they get the first overall. He was there. They just were smart enough to put Mats on screen.
Not Shaker. Yeah, so They didn't want him getting.
When the organization knows they've got to hide the guy they've just basically given the keys to, that's a problem. That's a big problem. I'm
also really not sure at all what Sundin's role is going to be in any of this. I'm skeptical anytime anyone's role has the word advisor in it, because that can totally range from someone who is there every single day as part of decision making to, like, it's the kind of term that, like, the mafia gives people, like, to pay them off the books for something when they never turn up to work and never do anything, kind of thing. Like, it's advisor is such a vague role that, like, so long as you occasionally turn up for a PR stunt, you're technically an advisor.
And that's why I think everyone wanted to know about the structure and the hierarchy, because I think there's a lot of people around the Leafs that are burnt by the idea that Brendan Shanahan had the power to basically veto the moves that Kyle Dubas tried to make. Especially, you know, the idea of the Marner trade, where Dubas was floating the Marner trade and Dubas got fired. Other times where there were moves to be made and basically it came out that Shanahan nixed it from above and went not happening.
Yeah.
But I think people just really want to know as well, who gets the final say? If John Chaker decides he wants to sign somebody or trade somebody,
is he allowed to do that? Does he need to call someone?
Yeah. Does he get Matt Sundin approval? Does Matt Sundin tell him his advice? Does it all have to go up to Keith Pelly and Keith Pelly has to say yes? I don't think anyone understands within Toronto still what this looks like and how much power does Chaker have versus Pelly versus Matt Sundin. It feels bizarre. And like, that's why, as I said, when people were saying that, oh, the league's thrilled that Toronto won the draft lottery. No, they're not. No, there's no way the league is thrilled that Toronto Maple Leafs won the draft lottery, because I don't think they want their first overall pick going to an organization that is this much of a basket case at the moment. It's really bad. I need to read the Steve Simmons question, because I think it's going to go down in history as one of the best questions at a press conference. Now, let's begin this by pointing out, and we both agree on this point, Steve Simmons is a horrible human.
Yes. He's kind of a hack, but
horrible human. He's a terrible human in terms of the way he approaches people, his media, and the way he writes. He's brutal. He makes garbage up. He doesn't care. He's hot take central. But this is the question that Steve Simmons asked at the press conference, which nearly blew Keith Pelly up. You talk about the due diligence that you did on John prior to hiring him and now hiring him. In the past 3 to 4 days, I've been in contact with about 20 people who work in the National Hockey League, many of whom are prominent names that we would all know. Of the 20 people I spoke to, one was supportive of his hiring. The other 19 thought it was a sham, to be perfectly honest. Words were used like con artist, liar, salesman. How did you come to a different conclusion than I was able to come to in a very short time. And his only answer was, I must have talked to different people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, as much as like that is an incredibly disrespectful question to post in a press conference, he's not wrong. Like I think that is the reality. Like even like that's probably not something that most people would say in public. It's certainly what everyone's thinking.
Like and like I think like Gino Reda asked a question earlier, and like Gino Reda is widely respected. Forget the idea of Steve Simmons. Gino Reda asked a question early on where he asked about Chaker's abilities within the hockey world and talking about the fact you've been out for a bit. Is this going to impact you? And Chaker gave a business answer about he's been working in hockey business and he understands the business of hockey and blah, 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 blah. And Reda asked a follow-up question about no, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the on ice, the players, the game, all of these sorts of things, and like in the general manager world. And basically the response that came from Pelly was, Gino, he understands. Gino, he knows. And like really dismissive. Keith Pelly walked into the press conference looking for a fight.
Yeah.
And like Chaker was actually, he was okay at the press conference. He didn't say anything stupid. He was quite like, he said the right things. When Matt Sundin opened his mouth, he said things that were fine. Keith Pelly looked like a moron. Absolute moron.
I feel like probably they were told to like, just let me deal with it or whatever. But it's hard because like, yes, they know that they've made an unpopular decision and they're gonna have to try and
Make this
defend that. But also like they are also in the Toronto media, and this is kind of always going to be the general attitude towards anything they do. There's always going to be some inflammatory shit. It's kind of how it is. Like, it's not that it's weird though. Like, it's not that other places don't have like inflammatory reporters who will, say stuff and make shit up and all that kind of stuff. They just don't generally get given the level of credentials to be like in the room with that kind of thing. Like, Pittsburgh has people that do the same shit. They don't generally tend to keep their press credentials very long in like that kind of situation. The Toronto like media situation is fucking weird.
The thing that I find really funny about the Toronto media, they go, the Toronto media is horrible and they're mean and they're nasty. You have the ability to stop the, like, again, Rosie D'Amato turns up to maybe 2 press conferences a year. She's a hack journalist. She doesn't really understand hockey. She rocks up every year, asks a couple of troublemaking questions, and goes away again. Steve Simmons only turns up to stir shit. Yeah. That's why Steve Simmons turns up. If he turns up at your press conference, don't hand him the microphone.
Yeah, he has a job because he stirs up shit. Like the reality is that it kind of works in sports media in a way that it doesn't in a lot of other stuff.
It's one of those things where I think the Leafs, and I agree with this point, is that the Leafs argument would probably be, well, look, we don't want to restrict the media. We don't want to control the media, but they do because Rogers owns the Leafs and Rogers owns Sportsnet, and anything that might be too critical on Sportsnet is probably not going to go to air because they've got the ability to ring down and go, nope, not saying that. So, like, I think it's from that regard, I think there is control of the media, but I don't agree with banning press. But by the same token, you can say that, like, we're not going to let Steve Simmons and Rosie D'Amato there because they don't regularly cover the team and they're not the beat journalists and they're not there every week. And, you could, we don't need columnists appearing. We only want the journalists to report. You could get away with all of that if you wanted to. I think the other thing that would really worry me if I was a Toronto fan is the fact that they not only do they refuse to make any comment about the idea of the coach, but they praised Craig Berube as an excellent coach. And the suggestion has been the whole way along that Keith Pelly loves Craig Berube and wants Berube to stay in charge. Now, Chris Johnston reported that Austin Matthews still hasn't made any decisions, even though he's contracted for 2 more years. And some people are like, well, he's contracted. Well, yes, but he's the superstar with a contract that he can run down and leave for nothing if he really wants to.
Yeah.
If you're going to move him, you kind of got to do it like now. So a lot of the suggestion internally, and there's been whispers going around, is that if Berube's back, Matthews may go, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to play. And look, to be fair, if I'm Austin Matthews and looking the way that I've played under Craig Berube, I don't want Craig Berube back.
Yeah. I mean, look, to be fair to Pally and so forth, like, you don't that's the response you have to give when asked about a coach that you haven't made a decision on officially yet. Like, if he's not fired, you can't just be like, we'll see whether Craig comes back in the press conference or whatever. That's immediately just going to become incredibly inflammatory. You have to be, Craig's a great coach, and you can still say that and fire him tomorrow. Like, there's no commitment in praising him in the media at this press conference that's not about him.
I agree, but I agree to a point. The point I agree to is that I agree that you can do those things. I think the problem that I find with this, though, is that it's kind of been made clear that from internal memos and all those sorts of bits and pieces that basically they don't want to fire him, that Pelly doesn't want to fire him.
Oh, they very much might not.
But this is the thing. I think the concern personally from a lot of people isn't so much in the idea that, you want to criticize him or say he's going to go now. But I think they want to at least feel like they're going to explore options. And you can say, we like Craig very much. We think he's a good coach. We need to evaluate our options. And we need to do a review of the team before we get any further.
Yeah.
So you can do that. And you can say he's a great coach, but you also need to say, but, we haven't conducted our review yet of the season. We've just got a brand new leadership team come in.
Yeah.
We're going to take a week or so to have a few conversations.
They need to have some input on this.
And then we will make a decision on the franchise and where it's going. You can do that. They very clearly didn't do that. They just said he's a great coach, and John Shaker goes, I'm going to talk to him this week.
Yeah,
and that was it. That was it.
Yeah, to be fair, like I imagine that there probably will be some changes coming. I don't know how many people have a lot of confidence in the changes that are to come, though. No. Given what they've said so far, given the choices that they've made, basically having what happened in the last year or two with this team, where they've really kind of fallen right out of the playoff picture. They really have kind of fallen from grace since moving on from Kyle Dubas. I don't know what they have done here that is supposed to give anyone confidence that they're going to get back to the promised land quickly.
I also look at that and go, I think the reason they had to be a bit faster is there's a team we're going to talk about later, who have just been eliminated from the playoffs. And I have a feeling that if you were Toronto, there's one place you probably should be looking for your bench. And I think if you are dilly-dallying and you are not making decisions and you are not leaning in that direction right now, that coach is going to go somewhere else and quite probably win a cup. And I think you've got to make a decision, and you've got to make that decision quickly, because Bruce Cassidy is not going to stay on the market forever. And I think most people in the league are now fairly certain that Bruce Cassidy's probably going to find himself in Edmonton. And if that happens, I think we're all in a bit of trouble. So if I was Toronto, I wouldn't want Cassidy to get anywhere near Edmonton. I would have been doing everything I could to say to Bruce Cassidy, what do you want? What do you want? We will overhaul whatever you want to make this team work. Right? What do you want? And we can say, well, they've only just got there, but Shaker was basically hired a week ago. Everyone knew this was happening a week ago. They could have started conversations.
Well, the thing is too, the interview process involves these kind of questions. Yeah. Like when you're interviewing for an NHL GM position, or really any kind of front office position, it revolves a lot around discussions about, well, what would you do if you came in here? What's your approach? What do you think this team needs? What do you feel about, the coaching style? What do you feel about the players that we've got, et cetera? That is discussions that they had as part of the hiring process.
Yeah. And as I said, if the belief is true and Pelly doesn't want Berube fired, that's probably part of the conversation. Is okay. So how do you make it work with this coach? So that leads us nicely into the first day on the job. I'm going to come back to the other things because I think we need to go from here straight into the draft lottery and then come back to everything else, because I think everything else flows on. This flows on because the first full day on the job, the Toronto Maple Leafs win the 2026 draft lottery and are selecting first overall in the draft. And this was, look, there was so much drama. All of it involved the Leafs because obviously the Leafs have, if they were outside of the six, then their pick this year goes to Boston, and then they only give up one pick, but it's protected to Philadelphia. If it was inside and they were keeping the pick, then Toronto has to forfeit their next two, both unprotected. So Boston and Philadelphia now have an unprotected first each from Toronto, which is a problem for Toronto because it means they really can't rip the whole thing down without giving assets to other teams, right? They can't really do that. Now, first of all, let's cut it off at the knees because I foolishly checked the comments on the Australian NHL fans page just then, and the person who has been telling me the whole time that this was rigged came back and told me, you bet it's rigged. No one uses a lottery system. It's always rigged. It's definitely rigged. This is so rigged. It couldn't be more rigged. They drew the balls in front of you. We all had to sit there and listen to Gary Bettman. I'm hearing this in my sleep say, Thomas, please start the clock. I'm going to hear it in my sleep. Right? It just, it was so transparent this year, right? They could not have made it more transparent. And I'm going to hear people, they could have weighed the balls. You've watched that stupid John Travolta movie. No, that's not it. Again, it's like people who say that when the Knicks got Patrick Ewing, it was a frozen envelope in the thing and they reached for the frozen envelope. And that's been tested and completely debunked. You can't tell. I know that these are the lies we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
But Toronto won the pick. The next step is obviously where they're going with it. Now, if they don't go McKenna, you feel like it's a mistake. But there's a lot of suggestion that Matt Sundin, of course, watching a lot of Sweden, is probably going, hey, you know who else is pretty good?
Yeah.
But they're going McKenna. Like, there's no way they're not.
I feel like that's the layup option. It's you're probably going to regret it if you don't. If you really galaxy brain it and go a weird way with it, it seems like the safest choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. This is the thing. Every year we get to the draft and the prospect that is coming up is automatically the best prospect we've seen and blah, 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 blah. Now, McKenna hasn't been the consensus the whole way through either. He started as the consensus.
The start of this season, there were some concerns. He's kind of come back to form, but
it's been interesting because there's a lot of defensemen in this draft. And all of the defensemen had jumped up. And so there were a lot of defensemen at one point up into the top 1, 2, 3 spots. Then there's been a few other changes recently. Caleb Malhotra in particular, Manny Malhotra's son, has suddenly rocketed up, and he's probably now going to go third. We'll talk about second and third in a minute. We're definitely going to talk about second and third in a minute. But Caleb Malhotra's come up as a center. Chase Reed's there. Verhoff. Carson Krells. There's a lot of really good defensemen sitting in this draft at the top end of it. But McKenna's the pick. I don't think there's an argument there. Whether he's not the same level as a Matthews or a McDavid or a Celebrini. He's not, or a Bedard. He's not there. But he's not that far away. And I think that it's going to be, I would say, if I was Toronto, that's the other reason why I'm firing Craig Berube tomorrow. I don't think I want Craig Berube teaching Gavin McKenna how to play in the league. It feels like that's a bad move.
Yeah, it does not seem like his style worked well with Matthews. It doesn't seem like his style really kind of made this team any better. I wouldn't want to be putting, the next franchise player that you bring in or whatever into that system. Look, I think it's there's always every year this discussion of like, oh well, this has been the name, this has been the guy for several years, but here's this other guy, because there needs to be a narrative. Like there needs to always be like, oh, maybe it won't be McDavid, maybe it'll be Eichel. There has to be a second guy to compare it to. Stenberg has kind of become that, that de facto, like, oh, maybe it's this guy, maybe it's this guy, and you get a little bit of the during the year, someone will put out an article that's, oh, well, I've got McKenna at 3. I think I saw someone did that like today, I think that was Mackenzie. But yeah, it's always the way. There's always has to be that questionable kind of thing. But it's hard. Like it's entirely possible that McKenna won't be the best player that comes out of this draft. That's kind of the case with a lot of years where there isn't like a home run first overall, no absolute no question kind of pick. But I really feel like it's probably not going to be a defenseman. Like the player who ends up being the best player of this draft, it's so rarely when defensemen go high in the first or second kind of slot. There's so rarely the player who is the best of that class, and often the best defenseman of the class is some guy that went like 16th or whatever.
Yeah, I think the interesting one for me is that the overall consensus from most of the writers and most of the scouts and most of the people that have followed it all the way through is that if you were looking between if you were looking between McKenna and Stenberg, that Stenberg's probably going to be the better two-way player. But McKenna, his upside on offense is probably better. So that Stenberg's probably going to be the better two-way, and McKenna's probably going to be better purely offensively. And look, I think that one of the things that Toronto would get out of this automatically is that they replace Mana without the cap hit.
Yeah,
but that's the benefit. So now that I've talked about Toronto enough, who cares about Toronto? It's all about the second overall pick, baby. It's all about the Sharks. Sharks Nation. Mike Greer, the luckiest lucky charm you've ever seen. Did you see the Sharks changed their Twitter photo to the photo of Mike Greer sitting there with a slight smirk on his face?
No, I didn't.
Changed it to because when he wasn't smiling and they went, "Smile, Mike," and he went. They changed it to that. It's Mike Greer's head.
Great.
So the San Jose Sharks jumped from 9. Sorry, your San Jose Sharks jumped from 9 to 2, and then there is an issue with this one because, as they said, Stenberg could very well end up being the best player in this draft. But the Sharks also have massive needs on defense. Yeah. And they said if the Sharks were sitting at 9 or had maybe got to 3, they would definitely be taking defense.
Yeah.
Mike Greer, when asked about it, said straight up, we take best player.
Yeah.
If they're taking best player, they're taking Stenberg.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that's the right move. I feel like you don't want to draft for need. If you can get an asset of better value, it's not like they can't move someone for for another positional need or anything like that. It's not necessarily going to be like, and I can't imagine that any defenseman that they drafted in this draft is coming in this year anyway.
Now, what I also, what I think about with the Sharks, so I went back and forth on this. I started with Chase Reed, welcome to San Jose. I'm like, they're definitely going to go Reed. Then I had a bit more of a think about it. And what I think is more likely to happen, and I'm going to be told by people, pipe dream won't happen, blah, blah, blah. What I think the Sharks are going to do is I think that the Sharks are going to pick, first of all, they're going to pick Stenberg. The second thing that they're going to do, the rumors were that they're going to look at possibly moving William Eklund. Now, I've said all the way along, I'm not particularly keen on moving William Eklund. But if you're bringing in Stenberg with no cap hit, basically, and you think you're going to get Stenberg into the lineup pretty much immediately, alongside Misa and Smith and Celebrini and Chernyshov and all of these guys. Again, it's the last full year of a low cap Macklin. They're probably going to do that deal in this offseason. They'll probably lock him up to whatever money Macklin Celebrini would like to make is the correct answer to that question. I feel like you move that Eklund's cap hit. And what you do, and this is what I think San Jose will probably do. I'm going to go big on it. You know where I'm going because I've gone this way the whole time. But I think they might go smaller than this. But if you go Eklund and 19, that might be appealing to a team that has a defenseman that possibly wants to go and has a big cap hit.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, New York. I'm looking at Adam Fox. And you go, hey, would the second, we're not going to give you second, but would 19 and Eklund get us there? If it wouldn't, it might be 19, Eklund, and a prospect for Adam Fox. I feel like that's the sort of move. I'm not saying it's going to be Adam Fox before people.
Yeah. No, I think the framework of that makes sense. Like I think there are teams. I think there are teams, and there's probably teams that people don't expect that would be willing to, move someone out. For sure. Like I don't know. It's easy for us to speculate who may or may not be available and who may. I mean,
what I will say is the Rangers haven't made any changes.
Yeah.
They've kept their entire front office and their coaching staff. So Adam Fox would be walking back into the situation he wasn't happy with last year.
Yeah.
The other thing to note on that, by the way, and the other reason why, apart from obviously I really want the Sharks to have Adam Fox, the other thing I would talk about too is that all of the defensemen that they're being linked with, the Rangers, because the Rangers are being linked at 5 with a defenseman. And they're being linked with especially defensemen who play Fox's side and probably would benefit from Fox's minutes on the power play. So in that regard, they might be prepared to move off Fox's cap hit to try to get themselves some assets back, to try to get themselves some more, because their cupboard's absolutely bare. So I look at, again, it's not just Fox. There are other defensemen I think they could target. I really don't want them to do it for example, Morgan Riley, but I've hit Sharks keep on coming up with Morgan Riley. I don't want that. But I'd want Riley as a depth. I don't want him as my first. But
it's interesting. I'm just looking at Adam Fox's contract. He does have a no move clause this year. However, in one more year time, that turns into a 16-team no trade list. So I'm curious to say, like, if not this offseason, I wouldn't be shocked to see them move away from that next offseason.
Well, the thing is, if I'm Fox, if the Sharks appeal to me, and if you look at that offensive part of the roster, and you go, we're going to bring you in, you are the linchpin of the defense of this offense. If you can sell him on that, if you're Adam Fox, it makes sense to do that because you want the control where you go, as opposed to next year where you no longer have that control. They can move you. So I think this is why if I'm the Sharks, I'm like, hey, what do you reckon it takes to do this? And you try. You see what you can do with that. Because the 19th or 20th, whatever it's going to be, that pick becomes really important for San Jose because it's one of the rare occasions in a draft where we don't have to make that pick.
Yeah.
Like the cupboard is really well stocked now. We don't have to make our pick at 19 or 20. No. We can move that and go and get the asset. So I don't think there's a lot of people going, the Sharks will take the defenseman or the Sharks might even move back. I don't think either of those two things are going to happen. I think they're going to take Stenberg. I think they'll then probably move Eklund out. And they'll probably then try to move Eklund out for the asset.
Yeah, they have options at the very least.
Exactly. Now, poor Vancouver.
Yeah.
Poor Vancouver. Now, they went
This is not the first time they've had great odds and ended up in third.
So the Vancouver Canucks obviously go in with the highest odds of the first overall pick. Then the highest odds of the second pick. And walk out with the third pick. Now,
I think that happened to them when they got Pedersen as well.
The same thing happened there. They dropped. I don't know.
But they also got Quinn Hughes in that draft. So
much later, yeah, because because Quinn Hughes went, was it 8th?
Because ninth, I think, something like that.
It was 8th or 9th because that was the Barrett Hayden draft, and I know that because we've heard all about that this week with John Jacob. The fact that he didn't pick Quinn Hughes. But
7,
and like everyone goes, and everyone goes, oh, that's an oversight of your hindsight's a great thing. No, Quinn Hughes was always rated higher than Brad Hayden. So obviously, if you're Edmonton, if you're Vancouver, this is bad. But the upside is they're probably getting what I would consider to be the fastest rising player in the draft, because Caleb Malhotra has come from absolutely nowhere in the draft rankings to third. He's jumped up as being, outside of all of the defensemen, Caleb Malhotra is the best other player in this draft at the moment. And he's been absolutely flying through the rankings. He was nowhere near initially. So he was mid-tier. He had 26 points in 44 games in Junior A, which is not really much, right? Wasn't great. This season in the sort of in the league, he's absolutely his second half of the league in particular, he went on a scoring spree and looked the part. He looked bigger, he looked more agile, he looked a lot better at everything on the ice, and it just came easy to him. So Caleb Malhotra sprinted up the rankings. Is probably, I think, where Vancouver go. I don't think they're going to go defenseman at 3. I think they're going to go Malhotra, which then leaves the Rangers and the Blackhawks with defensemen, which I think they're both fine with.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rangers need a center, but they're not going to take one because they're the Rangers and they don't do that. Why?
Yeah, and they're also at that point not getting someone who's coming in immediately.
Gosh darn it, we've gone this long without a center. Why would we bother with one now? Played for years without a center. We've played cup finals without a center. I think the draft lottery was really interesting for me. Obviously, I was happy with it, but it was interesting for me just because I don't believe that the draft lottery bails Toronto out of their problems. I think it gives them a good asset. I don't think it bails them out of their problems.
If at very least, if you consider McKenna to be a replacement for Mana, it kind of just sets them back to how they were a year or two ago.
Yep. Except with Berube coaching it.
Yeah.
I think the Sharks
really better off than they were a few years back.
I thought my favorite of the tweets, and I sent it to you immediately, was the Down Goes Brown tweet, which was that, congratulations to Toronto on whatever cup the NHL are going to come up with to give them for their drafting of McKenna, while the San Jose Sharks go on to win the next 10 Stanley Cups. Definitely, if you're a Sharks fan, this is absolute rarefied air, and the pressure is really genuinely now. Ryan Wasowski is under huge pressure because he's got to deliver playoffs next year at an absolute minimum, because this roster is now stacked, and there are coaches who will line up to get this damn roster. So I think that's interesting. And Vancouver, look, they might get a good center. What they don't have at the moment, however, is they no longer have a president of hockey operations, because Jim Rutherford has decided that he will step down and move into an advisor role, which, as we've said, sometimes is more powerful.
Look, I've heard that before from Jim, but
how can you be more powerful than Jim Rutherford? I mean, he's more powerful than the Aquilinis.
Well, I mean, Jim Rutherford had retired before he got hired by the Penguins. Like that was 10 years ago.
And he's
That
been
was
showing it in Vancouver.
yeah.
I can we say there's a proud moment in Jim Rutherford's Vancouver tenure? I don't think so.
No, not really.
Lots of conversations around culture.
Yeah, it didn't go great there.
Can I just point out, just quickly on that, for all of the conversations Vancouver had about culture and the idea of like Rutherford and co taking the side of the players trying to harden the culture, they're the players they got rid of. So they berated all of their young stars for being weak and kept them. Right. If you're going to berate them, and by the way, I think the berating of the young stars and the taking of JT Miller's side is bullshit. But if you're going to berate everybody on that roster and say that JT Miller's the only one who tells it like it is, why do you then trade JT Miller? You trade everybody else and you keep JT Miller and you build it around JT Miller and what he does. No. They called everybody else in their organization stupid, basically, and then got rid of the guy who was calling them stupid and went, and now you'll sit here in the mess. I don't. Who would have thought that, like, I mean, everyone goes, I can't work out why Pedersen's so broken. I can. He's in Vancouver. Like
it's wild because I mean everything looked so it looked so good for them like at the start of like Pedersen's career, and it just something went off the rails at some point in time there. Like
went off the rails. What happened?
Yeah, it really like they had like peak Pedersen and Hughes, and everything was clicking. He was making all these highlight reel plays, and then they brought in Miller, and just the whole fucking thing just imploded.
There are so many mistakes. Like in hindsight, Rick Tocchet going was a mistake for Vancouver. I mean, the funny part about that is that nobody, wherever he is, nobody likes Rick Tocchet. When he gets somewhere, like look at the Flyers right now. They're in the second round with Rick Tocchet, and they hate Rick Tocchet. With a fiery passion, they hate Rick Tocchet. Like that fan base won a series and was almost upset that they won a series because it meant that Rick Tocchet did something. Right? he inspires this.
He's inspired the players against him, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, basically, I think it's an us versus them mentality. But it's just weird. It's really weird. Now, the more amusing side of Vancouver. Let's talk about the amusing side of Vancouver, because we asked the question on the last podcast before obviously Rutherford stepped down when they were looking for a general manager. Our question was, well, which moron is going to want to step up and take the general manager's spot in Vancouver? Because no one in their right mind wants to work for the Aquilinis, and at the time Jim Rutherford, but nobody wants to work for the Aquilinis. Who would be dumb enough to walk into that building? Apparently the answer was Pierre Dorion, who...
I mean, to be clear, Pierre Dorion has been interviewing for like every GM job for the last 20 years.
So where it gets funny is that what everyone worked out was the only person that said that Pierre Dorion interviewed for Vancouver was Pierre Dorion, who's been going around and telling everyone he interviewed for Vancouver. So the man obviously likes working for psychopaths, because like Eugene Melnick to the Aquilinis, that's a pathway. It's certainly a pathway. Look, the answer is likely to be Ryan Johnson, or as the Google's, when I was looking up the list of candidates today, as the Google search, the AI Google search said, Ryan Bonus, that old chestnut, Ryan Johnson, who's been the internal candidate who's been groomed to take this role forever.
Yeah.
Evan Gold has also applied again, and Evan Gold is in the mix again. I think it's going to be Ryan Johnson. I think they'll take the internal. It feels like it's probably the right answer. I don't know. I mean, I'm interested with the fact that Evan Gold keeps popping up in all these conversations but doesn't get the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. It seems like that happens with a bunch of guys where like they're the one who like is in this interview, whatever, and then like maybe they're like fourth or fifth team interview, they finally like actually end up getting the gig.
It happens a lot with coaches too, where you get the same people going for the coaching jobs and they don't quite get them, and then occasionally they do get them and then very quickly disappear off and go, oh, that's why they didn't get them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is too with like a lot of these front office interview situations is like they will interview like 15 guys because there's like 5 guys that they're throwing a bone to who just want to have their name appear in the media as being someone that was interviewed for a GM gig because they're an assistant somewhere else there, whatever, and they want to move on, but they know that they're not probably going to get the job, but at least like if their name is in the mix, then other GMs hear about it, other front offices hear about it, or whatever. The next time something comes up, then it's like, oh well, we know that he was interviewed for this other guy, for this other spot. Maybe we'll give him an interview as well, and then eventually you get yourself into the actual room.
I think there's a lot of guys that just go and get their name out there, so they've got their name out there, so people think that they're in the running. Which is where I'm going to give some credit to the New Jersey Devils, because the New Jersey Devils didn't stuff around. We talked about this in the last podcast because we said that Sonny Meta was obviously being courted by Toronto, but we both said at the time that we believed the same thing that we'd heard from everybody else, which was that they were almost using Toronto as the stalking horse for him to go to the Devils. And the day after we record the podcast, Sonny Meta turns up as the general manager in New Jersey, replacing Tom Fitzgerald, who, by the way, is probably within the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks going to be announced as the new president of hockey ops in Nashville, in all likelihood. So jobs for the boys, ladies and gentlemen, jobs for the boys. Tom Fitzgerald does a very bad job in New Jersey and is rewarded with a president of hockey ops job.
All you got to do is get an NHL front office job once, and then you'll just constantly keep, no matter how big a fucking mess you make of it, no matter how much of a scandal it is, no matter how much you break the rules, you will get another gig somewhere else. Sometimes you can break the law then still get brought back.
I wonder, and this is just me coming up with idea. They need a general manager in Nashville as well. I wonder if the name that pops up for Nashville isn't Brandon Pridham. And I asked that question because the other report that came out of Toronto was that basically the John Chakers contacted a couple of his friends who one of them works currently for the Kings, although he contacted him before he was tapped up by the Leafs. So technically it's not tampering because he wasn't an employee, but basically there's 2 people they want to bring in to the hockey ops side to do cap management, which is what Brandon Pridham does for the Leafs. He's also been mentioned. He applied for the general manager's job. He's always been mentioned as probably the next one of the general managers will be Brandon Pridham.
Yeah.
I wonder if Pridham's name doesn't pop up in Nashville under Fitzgerald as their new general manager, because that would make a lot of sense. If he's going to end up being out in Toronto, I think there are a lot of teams that would pick up the phone and say, what role would you like? There might be a couple of them that go, hey, president of hockey ops, like that would make sense. Pridham, for those who don't understand why, like I'm talking Pridham up so much, Pridham basically wrote the cap rules for the league.
Yeah.
And then was hired by Toronto to work the cap. So you probably want Brandon Pridham in your room somewhere because he wrote the rules, literally wrote the rules. Victor Hedman, let's transition. Victor Hedman released a statement on mental health. After the elimination, he put out a statement saying he was stepping away from hockey for a bit for mental health reasons.
Yeah, he'd missed some time this year already, and I think that was kind of like this statement. I think was more referring to the time that he'd missed this year, and that he's now kind of in a better place and stuff, but had been struggling through the year.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's a bit refreshing to again see athletes turn around to people and say, "Look, I wasn't great. I wasn't great. I'm in a better spot now. Wasn't brilliant at the time, but got some help." And really sort of, again, reminding people to get some help, I think is really important. Because it's something that especially, young males tend to really do badly. So I think, but everyone does it really badly in most cases, but I think young males in particular do struggle with that. The NHL salary cap.
Yes.
Now the cap went up and everyone acted shocked, even though we all knew the cap was going up.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of known the figures for a while, but now they're official.
Everyone went mental about, oh my God, I can't believe the cap's gone. But like, this has been out there for 6 months.
People have been saying this for the whole year of like, it's going to go up 10 mil.
The floor becomes 76.9. The mid is 90.4. The ceiling is 104. And the maximum salary is 20.8. So Macklin's going to be taking... I don't know. Now, look, I actually think Celebrity's contract will not be ridiculous. I feel like he's going to be somewhat reasonable because he's at the point of his career where he'd like to win, and then he can worry about the money later. Like, I think he'll... I think, again, I know I'm bringing it back to the Sharks. I don't care. I think the Macklin Celebrity will sign 8 years. I think he'll sign 8 years. I know it'll be a decent cap hit, but he'll sign 8 because I think they want to lock in with his core, try to win as much as they can, and then he can make financial decisions off the back of it. Because think about it, by the time he finishes the contract, he's going to be 28. Prime of his career technically will be about 28, 29. So
I just wanted to have a look at like what the cap situation is for teams next year, and it is wild how low the Penguins' salary like projected is next year. It's like 58 million. They need to sign like 18 million just to meet the cap floor. And people still think that like, oh no, Malkin's not going to sign a contract there. But yeah, look, there's a lot of teams that have a lot of cap space next year. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great free agents next year, so I'm very curious to see how that's gonna work out. There's gonna be a lot of teams, I think, just re-signing just a handful of guys that are just shuffling around. But yeah, it's nice to see. It's nice to see the cap go up. I think hopefully that because the free agent class is so weak, hopefully this will mean that young players get better deals because these teams have some actual like space to move. Like we need to kind of push up the average deal for a talented player in this league.
Yeah. So to give you an idea, the reason I'm so calm about the idea that the Sharks will sign Celebrini this offseason and sign him to a decent deal is the Sharks' projected cap space for 26-27 at the moment is 41 million. We're okay, guys. They can do the Celebrini contract, and they can do it now. The year after, by the way, it's 81 million. So like the Sharks will build everything on their thing around the idea of the Macklin Celebrini contract. And I think Macklin Celebrini will get his new deal done. They can also do Will Smith's deal. So I think they'll probably look to do Smith and Celebrini and link them. I'm interested to see what they put in terms of clauses is my only concern. Not with Celebrini. I think you give him a full no move and you don't care. Will Smith, I wouldn't give him a full no move. Like, again, I think the only player you give a full no move to is your absolute franchise pillar. If they're not a franchise pillar, you don't give a no move to them, like, because you need to be able to get out from under some of these things. So I don't think you do. I don't think you do that. But I think, look, the cap going up is a really good bit of news for everybody concerned, except for those teams that will not hit the floor. Before we move on as well, I do just want to mention, because obviously the Women's League is back as well, and I don't know if anyone saw the other day, but we had Montreal versus Minnesota, and 3 overtimes. 3 overtimes. And thankfully, Marie-Philippe Poulin decided that everyone can go home. But it was a crazy game. I watched the replay of it. The victory, it was such a good game. And again, MPP just decided that people could leave now. It's just like, hey, go on. We're done. Go on. We're done. All right, let's get into the playoffs, shall we? So let's start with the first of the sweeps. No, sorry, the first of the sweeps. The Ottawa Kachuk's were swept by
Kachuk was not good in this series.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, really, no one.
Florida with his brother, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one on the Senators really were good in this series. Like, for sure. To be honest, I really thought this was going to be a lot closer. I picked I picked this series to go a lot longer, and really, just the Senators just did not show up for this series.
I predicted this series to go a lot longer. I said it would be 4-1.
Yeah.
So that extra game. Also, for some reason, we can't work out. We checked it beforehand. My bracket ended up in every other thing except for the extra shift bracket, which is really annoying. So I'm just counting my points outside it, and I'm going to claim victory if I win. But yeah, this one I had it as 4-1.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we both really thought that the Hurricanes were going to win this series. It was just I didn't necessarily expect them to run over the Sens quite so.
I thought the Sens might vaguely be better.
Yeah,
but they were not. They were. I thought that the Hurricanes would have too much for them. I did think the Sens would put up a lot more of a fight than they really did. I know the one game went to overtime, but still, the Hurricanes were never headed.
No,
there was no chance.
They never trailed. Like the thing is, like the Hurricanes in round 2 trailed the other day for the first time in something like 27 days or something.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So the next game is the Sabres and the Bruins. Now this one went to 6. Buffalo wins it in 6, which thankfully I predicted that Buffalo would win this series.
Yeah, I also picked Buffalo, but I was expecting the Bruins to give them a hard time. I think the Bruins are hard out in any playoff series. They know how to make it difficult for teams.
It started as a hard out, and then Buffalo kind of in the mid stretch of the series just took off.
Yeah.
Now obviously, but Bruins come back and win Game 5. I did think it was quite funny that like the Bruins win Game 5 in overtime, turn around to everyone in Buffalo, and they're yelling at the crowd. Charlie McAvoy yelling at the crowd, "We'll be back here! We'll be back here!" And then the Bruins got stomped. No, you won't be back here. You somehow managed to sort of avoid everybody's bubble bursting again. I still don't quite know how, but Buffalo has worked this out, and they're playing amazingly good hockey right now, and they're entertaining, and they're showing no fear, and there's no reason for them to show fear at the moment. So they're playing really well. I'm really interested to see how Buffalo go in the next round. I think this will be, and obviously we've seen a starting of that, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Let's talk about where the next series went, because the next series was up. I tipped the Lightning. I thought the Lightning would win this one.
I thought so too. To be honest, if you replay that Game 7, they probably win. But look, so I mean, obviously it was a back and forward series, like literally back and forward in terms of like, one team won, then the other, one team won, then the other, until it went to Game 7. The Game 7 was absolutely fucking insane. Like literally Montreal had 9 shots on goal. They had 10 at one point in time, and one of them got taken away. But like it is tied for the least shots on goal in a win in NHL history, and it is the winner for, like, it's the only NHL playoff win with 9 shots on goal of all time. So like honestly, they were like just absolutely like outchanced, but they managed to score twice, and that's really all it was.
Vasilevsky was unusually not resilient in this series.
Yeah,
I thought it's funny. In a series where Andrei Vasilevsky's in net, you would think that the goaltending edge goes to the Lightning, and I thought he was outplayed in this. I thought he was outdueled. I genuinely thought he was outdueled in the series, and I think it sounds weird to say that Andrei Vasilevsky kind of was the reason that Tampa didn't win it, but he was kind of.
I mean, especially in this game, like you can't let in 2 goals on 9 shots, and then like that's
exactly. But don't. What I will say is, and I know people are going to go back to, you just hate Montreal, kind of. Don't let the Montreal people online tell you that this was a thumping and Montreal was so much better and they outplayed the Lightning and they were so much better. Again, 9 shots to win Game 7. Yes, they won Game 7, and congratulations to them. but 9 shots. That's not going to hold up across the playoff. You're not going to be able to do that in future rounds. And we'll talk about how the second round has started in a minute, because we need to go to the series that Brendan probably doesn't really want to talk about, which is the Flyers and the Penguins. And your Penguins let me down.
Yeah, look, they let a lot of us down. I mean, it was a weird one. This was, to be honest, a little bit what I was worried about. I did think that the Penguins were going to win this series. I'd originally picked the Penguins in 6, and I think that had the Penguins who played the second half of this series turned up at the start of this series, then that's probably what the outcome would have been. If the game 6, overtime, shot went in the other way, I think that they win the series. Like, if they had one more chance, they had all the momentum, they were playing significantly better than the Flyers in the last few games of the series. So basically, let's run it back to the start of the series. The Penguins coming into this series basically were cold and the Flyers were hot. The reason for that being the Flyers were well out of the playoff picture after the Olympic break. They came back from the Olympic break and they played their hearts out. Basically, the Flyers have been playing playoff hockey for 3 months, and absolutely props to them. They did exactly what they needed to do to win this series, and nothing more, essentially. They played defensively. I talked about this in our preview coming into the series. Like, they were the best defensive team in the league. All they did was essentially play defensively, keep chances to the outside, strangle, the Penguins' offense, let them make mistakes, and then score when the Penguins made mistakes. And they did that perfectly to a T for the first 3 games of the series. The Penguins were frustrated. They were taking bad penalties. They were absolutely not responding well in the way that they should. And the Penguins came in on a slide. Basically, the Flyers had to fight their way into very much like game 82 of the season to even get into this position. The Penguins had their position in the Metro locked up 4 games before the end of at game 78. They started resting all of their veterans. They played I think Crosby and Malkin and Letang and Carlson and everyone played 1 game of those last
and that
4.
was that
that was that mailing it in against the Caps in the potentially the last game of the Ovechkin and Crosby matchup, and they basically just everyone rest, don't get injured, we're gonna turn up for the playoffs or whatever. And they just turned up just flat as shit, and they didn't play well. And Dan Muse being essentially a rookie coach playing his first playoff games just didn't respond in time, didn't change the way that they were playing. The Penguins needed to change the system that they were playing. They needed to be able to get around the Flyers trap, actually dump in pucks and win them, and battle in corners and so forth. And they just were unwilling to do it for the first 3 games of the series. And I really thought that they were going to get swept. If they turned up doing that in game 4, absolutely no way that they win. Thankfully, they turned it around. They changed the style really honestly about halfway through game 3. It was too late at that point in time, but they started to realize our backs against the wall here. We need to change the way we're playing. And from game 4 onwards, they were a totally different team. There were still a handful of passengers on this team that I think really, were great in the regular season, but totally played themselves out of a contract in this playoff series. There were 3 or 4 guys like Anthony Mantha and, kind of go down the lineup of guys who had career years in the regular season that were just absolute fucking no-shows in the playoffs. But thankfully, towards the end of this series, we actually saw Crosby and Carlson turn up and kind of be who they are. And that kind of carried them to, what could have very easily been a reverse sweep if a bounce went the other way. They, were outplaying the Flyers in game 6. It looked like that they were going to win that and bring it back home for a game 7 with all the momentum in the world, with all of the good vibes behind them. But a puck went off Anthony Mantha's stick from a random shot from the point, and it went in, and that was the end of the series. They just basically just ran out of rope. They fucked themselves in the first 3 games of the series. They put themselves in a position where they had to win 4 games in a row, and that's just almost impossible to do against, like props to the Flyers. They did everything they needed to do to let the Penguins beat themselves in the first few games of the series, and that was pretty much all it needed to happen.
So before we did this, after we did the last podcast, we both recorded a set of predictions. You recorded the East, I recorded the West. How do you feel your East predictions sort of hung up in terms of like the way you saw them going?
I mean, not terrible. Like I correctly picked Buffalo and I correctly picked Carolina. I mean, to be fair, like I'm looking at this bracket again now. I'm looking at my bracket challenge. I think I did this bracket challenge with my heart and not my head, because I feel like I don't think either Pittsburgh or Philadelphia have any chance against Carolina. And that's not what I put on the bracket, but in my actual predictions for when we were preparing for the whole playoff series or whatever, I think both teams would have gotten spanked by Carolina, so it doesn't really matter. I did expect Tampa to come out of that series, and I did expect obviously Philadelphia to not be the one playing Carolina right now, but I don't know that matters in the grand scheme of things. I think either team are going to get destroyed by Carolina.
To give everyone an idea, before this podcast started, I asked Brendan a question, which is, and I think we need to go back and find out the answer. Have two teams ever made it to the Stanley Cup final without losing losing a game? Both sides.
I doubt it.
Because especially when you're playing 3 rounds to get there. So let's go to the West, because I did the Western predictions and I was let down by one team. And funnily enough, I was not let down by the Ducks. So let's start with the Avs. Now, I said in the predictions that I thought this was a 4. In fact, I said Avs in 3. It kind of was. Like the Avs they were never really, like, I know that the second game goes to overtime, but the Avs are the Avs. And like they were doing the first 2 games at a bare minimum pace. And then, like, the overtime game, they win, and you could almost feel like the Colorado Avalanche went back into the room after the game and went, right, that's it, no more. And they came out in game 3, and then they came out in game 4, and they just got better, and they just got better, and you got to remember, they haven't been playing any meaningful hockey in, like, forever. The Avs have been so...
They've had it locked up for, like, 3 weeks.
Yeah, the Avs have been so clear forever that it's a situation where they kind of like needed to work themselves back into some level of form. So I said Avs in 3 basically. I picked Avs in 4. It was Avs in 4. Again, that wasn't a hard one. The hardest series I had to predict, and I said this on the predictions, was I thought Wild versus Stars was going to be really hard to call. What I didn't see coming was the Stars were going to forget that the series had started. And that first game where the Wild just stomped them into the ground. And I think the thing that I found really interesting about this series is when it got into an arm wrestle, the Stars were better. But the Wild have this ability with the offensive power they've got and the ability for Quinn Hughes to break a puck out.
Yeah.
That if they catch you on the hop, they can be a couple of goals clear by the time you work it out.
Yeah.
That's where I think the Wild have it over the Stars. The Stars play very system strong, solid hockey. And if it gets into there, we saw in game 2, the Stars just did the Stars things. And then they got the lead in the series before the Wild then won the next 3 games. But if the Stars can get you in an arm wrestle, they're probably going to win that one more often than not. But what the Wild were able to do was just jump them and just sort of make the Stars have to chase. And when Dallas has to chase, they're not very good at that.
Yeah, I mean, and look, props to, I'm sure there were a few people who were like, how long are they going to have Quinn Hughes? This Quinn Hughes trade or whatever. It's absolutely the reason why they won this series. I did not think that, there's no way they win this series without Quinn Hughes.
No, they're not getting through it. Mammoth versus the Golden Knights. Now, I said that I thought the Golden Knights would win in 6. The Golden Knights won in 6. What I do want to mention here, and it's not just because of who it is, but I do want to make mention of the fact that John Tortorella seems to have decided that Carter Hart's his goalie. Carter Hart's save percentage in this series, in the playoffs so far,
it's abysmal.
It's terrible. The Golden Knights should have absolutely stomped the Mammoth. But Carter Hart was absolutely horrible. He wasn't great in game 2. He was terrible in game 3. He really wasn't good in game 4 or 5, where they won in overtime and second overtime. Like, I feel like Tortorella making a point and going with Carter Hart is probably going to bite him before the end of the playoffs, because he's not good. Like, and forget the other stuff about a horrible human being. As hard as that is to do, forget the fact that he probably shouldn't be in the league at all. He's not very good. Like, he's not playing well. He's not been solid. The Golden Knights have really ignored their goaltending for a while now. Like, Aiden Hill's there. You could put Aiden Hill in. But, you know, Torts is Torts, and he's going to make his point. He's going to do what Torts is going to do. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, Vegas should have absolutely stomped them. And the Mammoth were kept in it by the fact that Carter Hart let some very bad shots through. Like, really bad positioning, really bad work. Speaking of really bad positioning and really bad work, let's get into it, shall we? Because I called it Ducks over Oilers. I am going to dine out on this one, because not so much because I predicted the Oilers would lose, because I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to dine out on this one because my analysis of the series, if you watch the video, was the problem for the Oilers is the Ducks are too fast. And the Ducks are going to get offensive chances against a defense and goaltending that is terrible. And they're going to get in, and they're going to have volume of shots, and they're going to score goals. And the Oilers need to outscore them. Now, you're going to hear from people, and you heard from some people who were like, oh, McDavid was injured and Draisaitl's coming back from an injury. It's the playoffs. Everyone's injured. If Connor McDavid being injured means that your whole team can't win, probably you haven't built the roster properly. Right? That's the first thing. Secondly, nobody, when the Oilers have played teams in the past that have been injured and the Oilers have won it, it's the brilliance of McDavid and Draisaitl. But when someone does it to them, it's, oh, McDavid was hurt and Draisaitl was hurt. And it wouldn't be close if it wasn't for the fact that they gave them a chance. And it's, no. And I speaking of repellent human beings, I'm going to point out right now, because I got asked during the week, by Tim, fan of the show, friend of the show. Tim asked me, does Quenneville winning this round of the playoffs now mean that everything with Quenneville is forgotten and forgiven and everyone thinks that Quenneville is fantastic and wonderful? And the answer is no. I still don't think that the Ducks should have Joel Quenneville behind the bench. Having said that, Joel Quenneville completely outcoached. Like, they completely outcoached Edmonton.
Yeah.
And this is where I think the biggest story coming out of this is, there's a couple of stories. First of all, the idea that Stan Bowman is still a general manager, speaking of repellent human beings, the idea that he's still a general manager in this league is ridiculous. The idea that he's the person that gets to try to build this again is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But also the idea that the coaching staff, and what I thought was really interesting was there was an Oilers coach who came out of this looking really good. It's just not the current one. Jay Woodcroft came out of this as a hero because he's on the Ducks staff, and Quenneville admitted at the end of the series that he was really good at reading those players. He knew when they were jumping. He knew what they were doing. He knew their movements. He could read where they were going to be. He could read what the plan was before they did it. And so, he was really important to the Ducks' defensive structure against the Oilers. And they did, look, he might have been injured, but the Ducks did an amazing job. We've seen an injured Connor McDavid rip teams to pieces.
Yeah.
He didn't get a point. Was it game 3? I think it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the first, they kept him off the scoreboard. They kept him out of the games. And even when he could get involved, game 5 is the one where McDavid went, we're not losing today.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a feeling to me of, here come the Oilers. That had the death rattle of, I'm not going out in 5.
Down first, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going out in 5. We're at least going to try to take this home. I don't know. The Oilers, for me, I said it at the start of the podcast when we were talking about coaching. Surely this is Bruce Cassidy's landing spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what they're going to do about goaltending. Like, I mean, Jarry's playing his way
They've
out
got
of the
him,
league.
Tristan Jarry.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the
They
first
didn't even
time that
play
he's.
him. They played Connor Ingram.
I mean, this thing is, it wouldn't be the first time, and it wouldn't be the second time that Jarry has spent a stint in the AHL in his career, and he still has term on that contract. Like,
Now,
what a absolute fucking disaster of a trade.
Now, I need to give you a chance to defend him briefly, because I did rip into him for the overtime. So the one controversial finish in this one was obviously the goal no goal call, where Oilers fans went off because the referees couldn't see it and they called goal on the ice, and so you can't see the puck; it's not over the line. Okay, so the weird part about this one is like the NHL process is when it was actually broken down into by people from the NHL, it was broken down by former referees who said, yes, the rule says you've got to be able to see it and you need to be able to clearly do it, but it's designed for common sense. Right. And this was a comment that came out from past officials. It's not just, well, you can't see that puck, so you can't 100% prove it. It's a common sense rule. And we all know the shape and size of a puck. And that puck wasn't sort of on the line in.
No, it was very clearly
much
in.
Yeah. Right? Where I think this conversation now needs to go is for goal line technology and sensors in the puck and sensors in the post.
Yeah.
And,
we can do better than a random camera that we hope doesn't have anything in the way of it. For sure.
But I think a lot of Oilers fans got so caught up in the whole, but a technicality means it should never have been given in the first place, and they're trying to ruin us out here. If that had gone the other way and McDavid had done that and it was given as a no goal, you would be absolutely
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Come on, it's clearly over the line.
Yeah, let's not pretend that you're being totally neutral about this.
Goal. And if you listen to some of the commentary on it, Tyson Cole went in hard, but you'd expect him to go in hard on it. McDavid was the one who was sort of like, I don't know what the call was, like the call, but like we shouldn't be in a spot where that matters.
No.
And I think there's a lot more people within Edmonton and within the Edmonton fan base that probably need to take Connor McDavid's attitude towards things, which is we shouldn't be in a spot where that's going to decide it. Like that bounce of a puck. Now, to give him a chance, because I ripped him for it, but the puck does bounce. And Jarry is there's no realistic way Tristan Jarry can make that save.
No. It squeaks through pads all the time. I don't pin that one on Jarry, to be honest.
There's a bunch more you can, but not that
there's
one.
others in the series for sure that you can go, that's not good. That one, it's gonna happen sometimes. Unfortunately, there's no way for a goalie to know once they're down like that where the fuck a puck is underneath their pads.
So let's go into round two. Wild versus Avs could be the highest scoring 4-game series in history.
Oh yeah, that's nuts. Like that first game, Jesus. And they scored in bunches too. It wasn't like back and forward. So it ended up being 6-9.
22 goals in 2 games, everybody.
Yeah, I think that there were definitely series that didn't get that many get in 5 or 6 games. So the first let me have a look at the first game. So the 6-9 game, it's Avs, then Wild, Avs, Wild, Avs, Wild, Avs.
To give you an idea, the Montreal round 1 series had 30 goals in total. In 2 games, the Wild and the Avalanche are already creeping on it. A couple of things I think are true. First of all, we know the Wild can score. We know that.
Yeah.
The other thing you need to remember, of course, is that the Colorado Avalanche are just a machine.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I had Colorado versus Carolina as my final, and I just think these two teams are beasts. And I think the problem for the Wild, I think, with this series, and look, it could go long. The Wild could make a massive comeback here because it's been high scoring and they've shown they can score. I think the problem for the Wild is when you absolutely throw your best at a team and they beat you by 3, and you score 6 goals in a playoff game
and you don't win,
and you lose by 3.
Yeah.
Right. At what point do you just look at each other and go, boys, I don't think it's happening?
What else could we have done?
Like literally the Wild could go out in 4 and could look at each other and go, we couldn't do anymore.
Yeah. They could score like 30 goals over the course of the series and still lose in 4.
And yet they could score all these goals, they could lose in 4 and genuinely be able to go, what did you want us to do?
What else could we have done?
We did everything we could. Yeah. There's a reason why Nathan McKinnon is the #1 favorite for the Conn Smythe and Cal McCarr is second. Yeah. There is a reason, right? Ducks versus Golden Knights is going to be really interesting because, again, we had a 3-1 in game 1, and then the Ducks worked it out today and were 3-1 back. Yeah. So I feel like if this becomes a goalie duel, I think the Ducks have the edge.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, the Knights have all of the experience in the matchup, and the Ducks, this is a really kind of first run for a lot of players on that team. But it's this is not the strongest version of the Golden Knights that we've seen in the playoffs in the last few years. Very much could be the Ducks that takes it out. I think it's going to end up being quite I wouldn't be shocked to see this go 6 or 7.
The other interesting part of this is that, to bring it back to a Sharks focus, I need to. This could be really worrying for the league because the Ducks are doing this. The Sharks are finishing their load up. Southern California might be back. If California, because like the Kings won't be, but if this part of California is back, if the Ducks and the Sharks are starting to rampage again, this could be really worrying for a lot of the league because they're also young. So like this could be, and again, teams like Vegas and Edmonton need to adapt and need to adjust. Flyers, Hurricanes, like today went to overtime, obviously, but the Hurricanes are 2-0 up. The first game was almost like, thanks for coming, Flyers. We'll send you a ham. Thanks for coming. It's great to see you. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Look, today was a bit more competitive, but
I think it's going to be I can't imagine this is going to be a high scoring series. Like the tricky thing is obviously, the Hurricanes and the Flyers are both more kind of defensively focused teams. They are, teams that are going to keep a lot of chances to the outside. I think that if you I just don't know if the Flyers have enough punch to overcome the Hurricanes playing that same kind of style. I'm just I think that the Flyers are just kind of playing a little brother version of what the Hurricanes are trying to do, and they just maybe don't have the counter punch to be able to do it. I wouldn't be shocked if the Flyers find themselves 3 down in the series after the next game.
I just kind of, as much as there are a lot of people that would love to see the Flyers make a series of it, I don't think Carolina's going to let them.
No,
I just don't think they're going to. And then the last series that has started and started today, Buffalo. The story is Buffalo. The thing is, the Sabres don't look out of place.
No, I'm really happy to see after such a long time of Buffalo fans suffering through.
Rasmus Dahlin's playing in a team that knows what it's doing.
Yeah,
I was worried that in this series, again, we're only one game in, obviously, but I was worried that it would be very easy for Buffalo to be overawed by the moment and Montreal to do the whole, we're Montreal, we don't really care, and just sort of, but Buffalo look good. They just look good. They look solid. They're playing good hockey. They don't look overawed. They don't look like they're terrified of the moment. They look like they know what they're doing. If anything, I'd argue that the Habs are the ones that look a little bit like there's a weight on them of, you're the Habs. You're in round 2 and you're the Habs. You should be stomping all over the Buffalo Sabres. It's only Buffalo. But Buffalo are not playing like it's only Buffalo, and I think
No.
that's an important point. I don't know. I think so. Just for the rest of these series, just so we can sort of get it noted. I think that I think that Buffalo. I think Buffalo will beat Montreal.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna say Buffalo in 6. That's
yeah,
my
probably
prediction.
6 is probably right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Carolina in 4. I think they're going to sweep. I know it got a bit closer today, but I think Carolina's going to sweep.
Yeah, I mean, look, Carolina are not flawless. I think that there's a chance that the Flyers can take a game in this series, but I don't think it's super likely. I'm gonna look just to be different to you. I will say Carolina in 5.
I think of the Carolina Hurricanes and the Colorado Avalanche, I think the Avalanche are the team that is close to a perfect team, and I think the Hurricanes always have flaws. But you know, Ducks versus Golden Knights. I'm going Ducks in 7.
Yeah, that's it does feel like a series that's probably going to go 7.
And
Yeah, I think
purely the goaltending.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like if it was Vegas of like a few years back, I would easily lean Vegas, but like the Avs are rolling right now. I'm gonna say not Avs, sorry, Anaheim. I'm gonna say the Ducks in 6.
I think if the Knights made the switch to Aiden Hill, I think it's probably a line ball then.
Yeah, I think it's gonna make it hard for him, but
yeah, I think if the Ducks if the Knights made the change in net and took Hart out and went with Hill as the starter, I would probably think that Vegas has probably got just enough about them. But I just think the Dostal will out duel Cut Hart. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I'm going Avs in 4.
I think that I don't think that Minnesota is done, but
I don't think they're done. But I just think
they're gonna beat it. Yeah, I'm gonna say Avs in 5.
I like the idea that Nathan McKinnon is just going to decide that he really wants to put an emphasis on this idea of him winning the Hart by also just going out and going, I'm not losing. Not a game. Not a game. No, I'm not losing.
I mean, of those 4 picks, like I feel the strongest about the Avs, Buffalo, and Carolina. Like Vegas, I feel like is the one that could go the other way. But like I think that we pretty strongly agree on the others.
So yeah, I think that I kind of feel like when you look at the second round, I think that I feel most comfortable in the Avs. I'm actually probably, I don't know. I think the one that I think could go either way still, even though I think they're playing better, I think the Sabres Habs series is the one.
It could.
Actually, even though I said in 6, I have more of a belief that the Ducks will get past Vegas than I do that the Sabres can automatically get past the Habs. Again, it sounds weird to say that I said that one's in 7 and that one's in 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel more comfortable in the idea that I think the Ducks will beat the Golden Knights. Because I think at some point Tortorella is not going to quite know what to do when he needs to be really offensive.
No.
And like if the Ducks are going to be this high octane offense and they're going to score points, the Golden Knights need to put points up.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how Tortorella coaches that. I just struggle with that. And that's going to do us for this episode. We will be back. Let's say the end of the second round. That is, if it doesn't mesh with the third round and the end.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see if we can squeeze that in. Sometimes the timing works out really well, and sometimes it's terrible.
And sometimes they start series in weird order. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. Remember to share the episodes around. And we will catch you all later.